Welcome. Another week, another Super Bowl has come and gone. Maybe not like you wanted it, but it did happen. And no matter if it was a blowout or not, everybody tuned in to watch it. So thanks for joining for another week of the Jim Jackson Show. You can follow us on IG at Jim Jackson Show, but also on YouTube, youtube.com, Rich Eisen. You can follow us or any of the outlets that you download your podcast on. Listen, it's crazy week. Super Bowl, not the way we expected it. I love greatness. I love seeing greatness perform. I love seeing Patrick Mahomes kind of do his thing and Andy Reid. But at times, like we've seen before, with greatness comes a opportunity for someone to take advantage of that. And that's what Philadelphia did. The Eagles came in, dominated the line defensively, offensively, never allowed Kansas City to get comfortable. The story of Jalen Hurts all the way from, Alabama to Oklahoma to where he's at now has been phenomenal. A redemption story for him, but also a redemption story for Saquon Barkley. So shout out, congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles and those two individuals in particular. It's been about a week maybe since the big trade. Everybody's talking about it, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, but I'm going to talk about the long-term effects. Kind of the business platform, the business mindset for both teams. Again, I said this in the last show, that the long-term play for the Lakers is to get a succession plan in place. They tried that in the past post-Kobe with Chris Paul, but that didn't work when David Stern at the time nixed that plan. So they got stuck kind of in this in-between space where they weren't that good post-Kobe. And they didn't want that to happen with LeBron. And I don't think they thought that AD at his age and his injury history could be that person that could carry the torch moving forward. So Luka deal long-term. The short-term with Dallas right now with AD, I know he got injured. What does that look like moving forward? Cap flexibility for Dallas in the short term, the next couple of years. So we're going to dive into that with a very good friend of mine, Ramona Shelburne with ESPN. She's really tapped into the NBA on both sides, especially here in LA, being a native of LA. So we'll be able to talk about the business side, the thought process, the aftermath, and how does each team kind of look at their future, short-term, long-term, based around this deal. Talk a little bit WNBA, because I think the WNBA kind of kicked off this free agent frenzy, this trade frenzy with big-name superstars being moved to different franchises. And that kind of set the table for what we saw in an unprecedented trade deadline, a trade scenario for the NBA, one of which we haven't, I don't think, seen in the NBA with the number of superstars who got moved, but it was kicked off, I think, by a lot what happened with the WNBA. So we'll touch upon that and a couple more items. But I appreciate you tuning in. We're going to have a great show, a lot of insight. Can't wait for our interview with Ramona coming up. As promised, good friend Ramona Shelburne here to talk a little WNBA, a little NBA, a couple trades, the postseason. We'll talk about all things basketball kind of related. First of all, how are you? How was your Super Bowl Sunday?
You know what? We had a bunch of sick kids. I got a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. So they just bring home all kinds of things. And we're trying to watch the game, but it's like, it was a terrible game, wasn't it? I mean, the halftime show was good, but the game was kind of boring. That's Eagles fan. It was kind of lame.
I know. I'm a Steelers fan. So to me, it was like this. I couldn't lose. One, I love greatness. So I don't get tired of greatness.
Right.
But I was really pulling for Jalen Hurts and Saquon for different reasons.
Yeah.
When Jalen was in school and went from Alabama to Oklahoma, I loved how he handled the whole situation. It spoke a lot to his character. He really didn't go back and go at Alabama for not playing or wanting to leave. Right. He handled everything with grace, and that says a lot about him and his character, but it was also his family. True. But also a lot of the stuff he did endured up to this point in Philadelphia, despite accomplishing a lot of things. And the same can be said with Saquon leaving New York, how he handled the situation. He could have easily tried to rub it in their face on the last game of the season to go out and break Eric Dickerson's single season rushing record by playing in that game. But he didn't. And that says a lot to me about the young man. So I was extremely happy for not only just the Philadelphia organization in the squad, but those two individuals in particular.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I've always been a Jalen Hurts person because I for the same reason. Like there's just so few times in life where people take a demotion like that in such a healthy way, right? Like he doesn't talk, and he's not out there pounding his chest about the haters.
That's right.
Didn't believe in him. He just went and worked. And I appreciate that humility and that attitude.
Yeah, let the work speak for itself. And as we transition, it's been a busy week.
Yeah.
And I'm going to touch on a couple of different things, but I think it was kicked off earlier, less than a month ago, I think it was with the WNBA trades and kind of the names that were involved, not just the trades, but the movements with Kelsey Plum going from the Aces to the Sparks. Chelsea going, Jewel Lloyd going to the Aces, Courtney Vandersloot going back to
Chicago,
from New York. A lot of things. So that
don't
kicked
forget
off.
About Brittany Griner.
Brittany Griner going to Atlanta. Hold up now. A kind of a sentimental part is Natasha Howard going back to Indiana where she started.
That's right.
And why that's sentimental, she's from Toledo, Ohio. Her father and I grew up playing against each other. Scoop Williams, her father, was a year younger than me. So I always try to follow that. Zaya Cook is from Toledo now, with the Sparks. So I try to keep up with my girls, my female athletes who come from Toledo to make sure I keep my eye on it. So that transitioned us into what we saw with the NBA. And first, before I get into jumping into it, have you seen a time in your coverage, both WNBA and NBA, where the names itself, the magnitude of these trades have taken place? I know sometimes it happens at the end of the season, but during the course of the season with the big time names that were involved. Have you seen this before?
You mean the WNBA or the NBA?
Both.
Okay. So in the WNBA, I've never seen like a free agency that went down like this, where you had giant stars changing teams and being traded for each other. Like I remember a couple years ago, I was reporting on Candace Parker going from the Sparks to the Chicago Sky. Remember, she went home to Chicago. Yep. Because the rules in the WNBA make it hard for ladies to change teams, right? They have these core rules. And when the team cores you, like, you have to basically ask for a trade. Like you can resign, but they'll trade you. Ladies haven't really done that as much, right? They haven't moved teams quite as much. They've stayed where they are. And it's almost like it's starting to become a true free agency. It's not quite there yet because the new CBA is going to get there next year. So everybody's signing 1-year deals right now. There's going to be a lot more money. We're still talking like, the difference between what one offer is like one team will give you 110 and one team will give you 185. Okay. So that's not like life-changing money. I mean, it's good. It's a big difference, but it's not life-changing. Next year in the new CBA, we might see real life-changing money kind of differences where right now I still think players are picking the best situation for them. The money matters, but the best situation in terms of, how the organization is set up, facilities, resources, teammates, but also chance to win, comfortability in the cities, even stuff like the team marketing deals that some franchises have set up and others don't. I still think those matter a lot. Whereas next year, you're going to start seeing the money matter. And I think that'll be really fascinating for the WNBA. Plus, I think these core rules, I get why they're in place because, fan bases like loyalty and they want to latch on to certain players and stuff. But I think the league is going to graduate to a place where the players are going to start having a lot more power. And I think it'll be good for the league. I think it'll be good for the individual players because they need to make a lot more money. We've been seeing this with Unrivaled. Like Everybody playing there is making 250. Some of them are making even more than that. That's a lot more than they make in the WNBA. And Unrivaled is just, a 6-week thing. So I think there's money there. The new broadcast deal kicks in next year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be fun to watch because you saw Indiana, like they're loading up trying to surround Caitlin Clark with some talent.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I like this. This is possible now. People want to go play with her. You saw the Aces where they go and get a replacement right for Plum. You get Jewel Lloyd, who's been a leading scorer in this league. That's going to be a hot team. You saw the Sparks go from a lottery team. I mean, I guess we call it a lottery, right? They have the number 2 pick in the draft. So now you got Kelsey Plum on your team. And they look like they might be able to build faster because they were able to sign a free agent. And Kelsey Plum had been cored by the Aces.
Right.
And the fact that she's able to move is a real change in the WNBA that we see in this year and especially the last couple of years.
What do you think? And go back to what you said. You said that a player basically had to be traded, but in that same instance, it's loyalty to the fan base, to the organization trying to win. As the money now circulates through the WNBA at a higher rate, you're saying you're going to start to see players. Okay, now it's like, okay, understand the loyalty and all that. But this is where I want to go. The player empowerment part is about to begin when that money kicks in. Now, on that too, I know the union in the WNBA went back in and wanted to open it back up for further negotiations. Was that also to get a little bit more money out of that because of the TV deals in order for that money to now trickle down to the players in the WNBA? Yeah,
and I think they will in this next deal. I think it's not good for the league when there's a work stoppage. So I think that they couldn't do that this year. I mean, they need some time and et cetera. But I think the WNBA is going to look vastly different next year because now it's year 2 of the Caitlin Clark effect, right? It's year 2 of really highly competitive basketball, much more parity throughout the league. There's going to be teams like, obviously I think the Valkyries are going to have a hard time. That's the expansion team this year up in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel like I understand why the league gives them the 5th pick. That's precedent. You give the expansion team after the first 4 lottery picks, then that's when the expansion team gets a pick. That's tough. Usually you want to start a franchise with like a huge player. And then also in free agency because of the core system. But so because anybody who's really good, right? Like Kelsey Plum and some of the big name free agents, they're probably just going to resign. But if with the core, they can get cored and then they can be asked to go someplace. But if they're going to ask to go someplace and everybody is basically going to offer them a max offer, now you're just picking between the best situation. So the Valkyries are never going to be the best situation because they just were formed. Their team came to an expansion draft. But you know how the Warriors run things up in San Francisco, right? Like if they're able to get more money, get more assets, get more draft. I mean, just think of it like a poker game. You're sitting at the table and you're low stacked, you're the little stack. But next year they'll start having more money to throw at people. And that could really shift the balance of power. If teams see how an organization's run, how well they're supported. I mean, they sold out their games already. At the Chase Center. That's going to be an incredible environment for women's basketball.
No, I love to see it, and it's funny, and not in a funny way, but that set the tone for what happened in the NBA with the number of big name players, not just the Luka AD, but the Jimmy Butler. You got De'Aaron Fox going and Zach LaVine going, and all this movement that happened. Unreal. And I haven't seen it in my years. The number.
No, me neither.
Because usually during the trade deadline, it's a few here, few there. A guy may get traded, but then they really wait to the offseason to kind of really push the leverage and chips in. But here's what I want to talk about with the Luka AD. We didn't dissect it kind of a lot of stuff. We know apple to apple basketball wise, it doesn't make sense player wise because of the age difference and the upside with Luka. But the business side to me is very important. And I don't think people really understand this. Long-term goals for the Los Angeles Lakers by having a Luka there, first international player, big time, growing and building around him. Short-term with AD going to Dallas, new ownership, stay in the competitive championship fast lane, If you're going to make a trade, you do it with somebody you know, i.e. Rod Pelinka, to keep it quiet.
Yep.
For as we move forward and kind of go through this, relationships matter to me. It seems to me you had frayed relationships on both sides. In Dallas, you got Luka, J Kidd over here, ownership. J Kidd, Nico, ownership here, Luka over here. And maybe in LA, AD not on the same page with JJ Redick and that. What's next for both of these? And let's dig into the business side for Dallas, first of all. New ownership, what's your thought process on why they did this business-wise?
$354 million. I got to say,
but they're billionaires, though. I mean,
I know. But how do
Miriam made us to the
billionaires?
$32 billion. I know, but I'm just because they keep their money.
That's right. Okay, so I really think that they looked at that supermax that they were going to have to pay him, and we're not comfortable saying we're gonna tie all that money up in him for the next 5 to 7 years, right? Because that's what it is. The 5-year extension this summer off of what he still has. Okay, so it's really 7 years.
7,
right. It's I guess 6, but when you get to the summer, but that's he's 25. He's going to be 30 by the end of that, 30, 31 by the end of that deal. And I really think that, if you're going to invest that much money, I mean, that'd be the largest contract in NBA history by far. I mean, obviously Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have signed $300 million deals, but the way you get that money is that you have to be a lottery pick. Then you have to assign max extension after max extension, and then you have to re-sign with your current team. These rules were put in place to incentivize players to re-sign with their current teams. But now you're seeing a reaction on the team side to say, it's too much. It's too much money. It's a percentage of the cap. And as great as Luka is, the Mavericks decided that with his habits, they did not feel they were not comfortable paying him that much money and wondering if he would age well with that. Now, that's, if you want to use a financial term, they're shorting him. They're taking the hedge on Luka. Okay, they're betting their short-term future with AD and Kyrie against Luka's long-term with the Lakers. We'll see if they're right. There's other teams that have bet against Luka in the past and rue the day. The Phoenix Suns drafted DeAndre Ayton, right? The Sacramento Kings, as you know, Marvin Bagley, right? There's teams that have passed on him. He was the number 5 pick, if you remember, right? He was traded back to Dallas. And there's a lot of teams that, didn't think he was athletic enough, didn't know if his game would translate, whatever. Clearly, they were wrong. He is an amazing transformational player, a bona fide international superstar. But what you and I don't know how old you are. I'm in my mid 40s. Like, I 54. Can't get away with the things. What's that?
54.
You're 54. Wow. Okay,
54.
you look good. 54. I'm 45, so we flip that around. We're opposite. But there's things I could get away with in my 20s and 30s that I can't get away with now. Like I used to be able to pull all-nighters, no problem. When you need that story, I'll stay up all night. Sure, I got you. You go and you go. Now I do that, it knocks me out for a week. I feel terrible, right? And I think that the Mavs just felt like if we're gonna give that much money to a player, he's got to be the guy. He's got to be exactly who we want him to be. And they might be wrong. And they got to own it. But I'll say this about Nico Harrison. And I've known him for 20 years because he was Kobe Bryant's guy. And I knew him back then. I've known him since he's been a GM. First of all, the man trusts his gut. He decided to take a swing and go get Kyrie Irving when no one else wanted to take a chance on Kyrie because he knew him. And he felt like if he put him in the environment they had created there, he would thrive and succeed. And he has been absolutely right about that one. He gave up what a lot of people said were too much for Daniel Gafford or PJ Washington last year. They ended up being key pieces to the finals run. So he trusts his gut. He's been right. This one is a gut call here. And I understand how Mavs fans feel. I understand. I was here in LA when the Dodgers traded away all of my favorite players, Fox bought the team. They traded Mike Piazza, right? We were all, what? Mike Piazza, that's our guy, right? I get it. Like, I understand the fan life and the fan feeling and all that. And so they're going to be mad. But the one thing I will give him credit for, and I think that people are missing here, that man stood up there and owned it. That man stood up there and wore it. He did that press. He flew to Cleveland the day before the trade because he knew it was about to go down. Said, I need to be around the team. He made sure he did a press conference. He explained why he did what he did. You may not like it. You can judge whether he was empathetic or not. You can, how the fans feel, but he owned it and he wore it. And it's very uncomfortable for him right now and his family. I don't condone anybody making threats against people's families, no matter how unpopular a decision is. That's not right. And, it's like, to me, in the Game of Thrones, remember one of the opening scenes? It's like, if you decide if you're going to send someone to death, you swing the sword yourself. Don't make somebody else do it.
Don't make somebody else do it.
Right.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Yeah.
I respect him for doing that. Now, he's going to have to wear it for a long time. This is a short play and a long play for both teams, but it costs Luka a lot of money. That's the thing people don't realize. Like Luka that's $354 with the Mavericks, is $229 with the Lakers. I can do that math. That's over $100 million difference. Okay. And the Lakers, for them, I mean, obviously you're betting against his short term and his long term. You're gonna say, okay, we don't care if he's not in the best shape or doesn't tuck his jersey in or yells at the refs or whatever. Like, he's still Luka Magic, right? And they need a star, and they're gonna just bet on that. But they also don't have to sink 350 into it. All they got to do is 229. That's a really big difference.
Yeah. And so I think here's the funny thing, Ramona, is that, and you hit on a number of great points. One, I think with Nico, and I've been knowing Nico a long time.
Yeah.
I think he can confidently go into that press conference with his chest out, knowing that he had the ownership had his back. First and foremost. So you don't make a deal like this in the vacuum without having ownership being on board.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think ownership and the Adelson family, their bigger picture is the business side. They didn't draft Luka. Mark Cuban, they bought the team from. They kind of took away a lot of his day-to-day operations, even though at the beginning it was that he was going to run the day-to-day. No, slowly got away from that. So they're coming in here from what their business model is for the Mavericks, and it may not entail what it was, in the past. And they're able to deal with that. They say, look, the long-term play for us is A. We'll deal with some of the backlash short-term to reach our long-term goal, whatever that is. And by empowering Nico to do that, he can step out there and take all the hits, even though a lot are unnecessary, because you said this. Nico looked great for being able to get a Kyrie to change his perception and how he played and how he was viewed. By getting Gafford, by PJ Washington. He was looked at this genius to bring this team to get them to a championship. And then all of a sudden he's going to make a decision like this that makes no sense. Yeah. And I understand where I spent 5.5 years in Dallas. That's where I matured as a young man. I understand the vitriol and the way the fans feel. But you got to keep in mind, it's not Nico by himself and why this deal went down. It's ownership being able to say, this is what I agree upon. This is where we want to go. And Nico had the tool, because of that relationship with Rob Pelinka, to keep this thing under wraps. He couldn't take it out to the market without Luka and AD finding out.
That's DOA. Okay, so here's the thing. Like, let me present you with the alternative. Okay. Let's say that they had decided internally, like between Nico, J. Kidd, and the ownership, et cetera. Michael Finley's there. Dirk. They probably would have looped in Cuban. There would have been a big debate internally. Should we give Luka the Supermax? Should we do that? Do we feel comfortable? If we're not going to give him the Supermax, then how are we going to play this? Okay, if we're going to trade him, you know what some franchises would have done? They would have started leaking bad stuff on him. They would have started putting a bad story out here and there. They would have started to tarnish his reputation a little bit with the fan base. They would have, we've seen this happen in the NBA. You've been around a long time, right?
I've been around.
Right? So you could have seen that slow drip of teams, of information coming out, trying to kind of assail his character, trying to tarnish his reputation with the franchise. They could have, all the whatever skeletons are in the closet, they would have started coming out little by little. What does that do? That depresses his value, that tarnishes his reputation with the franchise. That make fans not like him rather than not like the franchise. And I think it tanks this season. So now if you're Luka and you start seeing these kind of stories coming out, or you start seeing this type of information coming out, you're feeling betrayed. You're feeling upset. And your chance to win this year and defend your Western Conference championship and go into the finals is now history. Now, I would say 90% of franchises would probably choose that route because they would not want to incur the kind of wrath that the Dallas Mavericks are incurring right now from their fans. They would make the fans hate the player, not hate the team. I've seen this a lot in my 20 years covering the NBA. And I think that sucks. Why do you got to point? Look, you brought up De'Aaron Fox. Okay. I feel like in Sacramento, he never asked for a trade. De'Aaron never asked them to trade him. He just said, I'm not ready to sign a long-term extension. Okay. And he knew that would force the franchise to think, should we keep him? Should we not? But when Mike Brown got fired, one of the last public things that people saw was Mike Brown calling out De'Aaron Fox on a defensive adjustment. And basically, the next day he gets fired at the end of a game, right? They lose that game, he gets fired. And, I wrote a story about that. I talked to De'Aaron and he kept talking to me about, hey, I really liked Mike. We had a really good relationship. He sent me a grade after every practice. I wanted him to be hard on me. Like he had a good relationship with Mike Brown. And yet, because of the way that went down and because no one has spoken publicly about why they fired Mike Brown, it stuck to him. Like fans kind of thought, well, maybe De'Aaron got Mike fired. When you're close to the franchise, I'm close to the franchise.
Yep.
Like, I don't think that was the case at all.
No.
I don't think that was the case at all. I think there might have been some other players that were okay. I don't think anybody rushed in and said fire him. But I think there might have been some other players that were more okay with that. But why let that stick to De'Aaron if you're trying to keep him and talk him into staying? And now the way they traded him, he never asked for a trade. Let's keep putting it out there. They made an independent decision to say, now's the time. Let's just do this. If he's not going to sign long term, let's just do this. Totally fair on their part. I think it's a smart move. You can decide or debate whether they got the right return. I think they did a good job. I think Zach LaVine's a good player. I really like Zach. He's had a good year. They were able to kind of clean up some of their cap situation.
Cap stuff,
and I think and I think they'll be able to compete for a while with that franchise. I think he'll fit right alongside Sabonis. But I think some fans in Sacramento probably are wondering, did De'Aaron ask out?
Of course.
He did not ask out.
Right.
But now instead of people hating the franchise, now they hate the player.
Yeah. And that's the thing, too. Again, I think, and I'm going to transition to the Lakers side of this, too, because I just believe that, and that's two prime examples from an ownership perspective of how things were handled. I just truly believe the bigger picture from the Adelson family, because they made their money from the gambling side of it, that they looked at Dallas, Texas as a bigger play. The Mavericks are a piece of that puzzle. They're not the end all be all. If this is Mark Cuban, you'll never have this conversation because he's not getting rid of Luka.
Yeah, you're talking about the gambling, the casino situation, right?
Oh yeah. And again, what people don't understand is that you have to change the Constitution there in Texas for legalized sports gambling. The Assembly only meets every 2 years. So they didn't get it this year. So you got another 2 years before they can go back in. They're going to lobby the whole time to get, the Constitution changed and to get this done. But you got 2 more years now. Okay. So their big picture is that. Now, for the Lakers, a couple of things stand out to me. One, they still got to sell Luka that the long-term plan is to be here. Okay. And how we're going to build out the roster around you. Second, what does this say about them being comfortable moving on, whether LeBron knew or not about the trade? Rich Paul is the agent that orchestrated a lot of this stuff too. But what does it say about the front office being more comfortable and confident to make a trade like this? And let's say they didn't inform LeBron. What does that say about them and them moving forward? I mean, past, LeBron kind of has this control over the franchise.
So since we're talking poker, I don't know, you play Hold'em, you know how this goes. Right? I got one rule. When I'm going all in, I want it to be me moving my chips in the middle of the pile, or I want to have it set up to where I want someone to put me all in. Like I'm pretending like I'm weak, but I want someone to put me all in because I know I got pocket
because you know
kings.
you got it, right?
Right? Okay. I don't want to be calling somebody else's all in unless I know I got the nuts, right? Like I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to be like, oh man, should I? I don't know. This is my whole tournament. Should I call it? No. If you got to think about it, you probably don't want to do it. Okay. So to me, this is the Lakers going all in on their terms. This is them saying, we're not going to get caught in the wilderness like we did after Kobe retired. Okay. When Kobe retired, they had a succession plan. It was called Chris Paul. Chris Paul was supposed to be their next guy. They traded for him in 2011. He was 25 years old, same age as Luka Doncic. What happened to that? David Stern nixed it.
Nixed it. Yep.
Okay. He was the owner of the Pelicans. He was acting as, commissioner and owner of the Pelicans. The timing on that was terrible. The Lakers and the Pels and the Rockets didn't wait for that meeting in New York to be over. And by the time that leaked out, every owner was on their phone typing off, angry emails to David Stern. They all had a chance to do something about it. I think if it waits another day, I think that might go through. There's also some debate about whether, David Stern ever signed off on that or knew about it enough before it got to the finish line. Eventually, we will do a 30 for 30 on that, I'm sure. But, to me, the real story is the Lakers learned from the big trades and the big issues of their past in the succession plan. The succession plan with Kobe didn't work out. And they spent 6 years in the lottery. 6 years. That does not happen to the Lakers. They have never had seasons that bad for that long. Kobe's last 3 years and 3 years after Kobe retired. And so they never want to do that again. LeBron came and saved them. He came out, from Cleveland, Ohio and said, I'll be the next face of the franchise. Now, did they get the best of LeBron? They got the last best of LeBron. Okay. They got his historic moments, passing Kareem. They got a title out of it. He's been everything they wanted and then some. I don't think anybody thought he'd still be this good at age 40, but they did not want to be left in the wilderness like they were after Kobe retired. And this was their opportunity to do something about it now. And, better 1 year too early than 1 year too late, right?
Bill Belichick.
Right? If AD was going to be the guy, I think we would have already known, right? If he was going to be the face of the franchise going forward, he certainly would have been a good guy to build around, but he's getting older, he's injury history, and he's getting more expensive. And so I think, there was a chance they would have had to trade AD anyway and not get the kind of return that they just got. And so to me, the Lakers, that's a no-brainer. The only thing they have to worry about is convincing Luka to stay and whether or not he's going to stay healthy. I think a year around LeBron, watching the way he works, his habits, look, I have so much respect for Nikola Jokic. And I remember a couple years ago when they went to the finals, I did a story on, when he really got serious about his training and his body. It was the year they lost to Portland in a 7-game series. Remember that? Yes. And he kind of ran out of gas. He walked into the coach's office afterwards and he said, guys, this one's on me. I ran out of gas in that second half. I'm never going to let that happen again. And from that point forward, he came back in the best shape of his life. And I remember saying that. Remember during COVID, you saw pictures of Jokic and you're like, oh my God, who is that guy? He lost so much weight. And you couldn't believe how much weight he lost. And it was like, I think he did all these things, even just down to I remember his guy, Felipe Eichenberger, he's the trainer there. Felipe was telling me Jokic used to play video games late at night and he would snack while he's doing that. And he's like, I just got him some fidget sticks, so instead of eating while he's playing video games, he doesn't eat at night, just stuff like that. But that man committed to fitness, committed to his diet, and has completely changed his game and elevated his game. At some point, Luka Doncic will have to do the same thing. But he's 25. Yeah. Obviously, cheeseburgers are 25 too, right? Right for you? You know?
Big time. Pizza, big. But the thing I love about Jokic is not only did he make the commitment to lose the weight, he stayed with that commitment to keep it down and understand He understands, and I think I would love one day for Embiid, if Embiid ever committed to being in shape, those soft tissue injuries and everything to me would dissipate. He'd be so much more effective. And Luka, he has something or somebody that he can look at in LeBron. Now, again, it got to be internal. It has to be something that he wants to do. Like Jokic said, I take full responsibility of this. It's on me because I burnt out. And Luka's been so good for so long, kind of like Zion, at playing the way he wanted to at his weight, that it clouds kind of the vision, understanding the long term. Short term, you can get away with it at times. Long term, as you go through this career, and now it begins to, and we see it with Zion, it begins to pull on you a little bit. And Luka, with that continuing calf injury, soft tissue, I hope that while he's there, that now he can see it. And again, we both for 25 once. People would tell us things we need to do. When you play softball at Stanford, people would tell you things you need to do. But until you actually went through it and matured enough mentally to see it yourself, you couldn't make the change until you saw it.
I know. And also, like for me, it didn't happen for me until after I had kids. And I had my first son. And all of the unhealthy things I used to do and be able to get away with, like I couldn't get away with it anymore. I had a little baby I had to take care of. And then during COVID, that's when my back went out. Okay. So it's normally for women, a lot of times you have a baby and then you get all stretched out, right? And then you come back together and you don't come back together the right way, right? Like, right? You get all big and then you go back down and you're like, whoa, I go back together. And so it's very common for women to have back problems when their kid is about 1 year old. And like for me, it was, I had a C-section, so that destroyed my core. They cut into your core. And after like a year and a half or so after my son was born, that's when I started having sciatica. Ended up needing I tried to do PT. I tried to lose weight. It was during COVID. It was a weird time. So people didn't see me going through it, but that's why I didn't go to the bubble. Cause I literally couldn't. There's no way I couldn't even sit. Like, have you ever had sciatica?
Yeah, but I haven't had it to the point where it stopped me. I've had it where it's been, it impacted me, but not a longer duration part of it where it's just stay with me. And I really had to go see a doctor for it.
Yeah. So mine was it was debilitating, could not function, couldn't even sit in a chair. There's no, I either had to lay down or stand up. And even that wasn't comfortable. So I remember hearing Ben Simmons talk about his back and I was like, oh, I know what that feels like, And whenever I hear that, I'm like, oh, I know where they are. And so for me, that was my wake up call. Like, okay, listen, you got a little kid now. I wanted to have another baby. You got to get back in shape. You got to get strong. Be that athlete you used to be. Get strong. Whatever it takes. You can't keep living like this because it's going to happen again. You're going to have another back surgery. Something else will go out. Your knees, your whatever. And it's and I remember my surgeon told me this. This is such a words to live by in your life. Okay, so people come to see him, and then they don't hear from him again. They have a good meeting, And I go, what happened? He goes, oh, they're just not in enough pain yet.
Right.
It doesn't hurt enough yet.
Keep it real simple with that one, right? Keep it real simple.
The doc is like, he knows, they'll go home and they're like, yeah, it hurts a little, but it's not that bad. When it gets real bad, you don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice.
No, you got to do it. And so I think that's how most change happens. Is you just, it has to come from within. Yeah, sure. But also it has to hurt enough, something has to hurt enough to get you to.
And I think Luka losing, and then now from ego perspective, knowing that he would never leave Dallas unless he was it was his own choice. That I think gives him a different mindset to be able to prove to himself and to the Mavericks. He's going to have that. He's going to have that against ownership, Nico, J.K., whatever it is, to prove. And I think that will catapult him where we see a different Luka Doncic. I'm talking about this year. I think we'll see something different from now to the end of the year, whenever that ends for the Lakers, and carry forward. But, I mean, that's great insight, Ramona. I knew you being out here on the ground, kind of digging into the weeds, kind of understand. And again, me, it's the bigger picture, it's the business side. So I really wanted to address that. But the funny thing I wanted to address too is we were off air talking about, and I said, you and KD cool? Yeah, you're good, right?
We're good. Kevin and I have always been good. And I think like the thing is like I really know Kevin from a media perspective. I don't know him the way his friends know him or whatever. But like last time I saw him, we talked for a half hour. We were like in the we walked out and talked after the Christmas game. We've talked after his comments like. I didn't take it personally. I thought he was kind of standing up for his teammates, basically saying, no, our locker room's not toxic. Like, it's easy to say that if you're not here every day. And if you're not here every day and you don't see it, and he also, if you actually, this is the thing that bothers me about modern media. Okay. Like nobody actually listens to what anybody actually says. Nobody listens to the full quote. Nobody listens to what I actually said. Nobody reads the story I actually wrote. They just see the little headline or the little tweet or the aggregated thing. I mean, we all talk about aggregation. What is aggregation? Somebody has one clip quote, a quote, a nugget or whatever. It's recycled so many times over. The context is stripped away of it. I thought what Kevin said, his criticism of what my point was, totally fair. I would have said the same thing myself. In fact, I did say the same thing myself when I talked to people in Phoenix about it. I was like, you know what? You guys are right. Like, look, yes, I talked to a dozen people in Phoenix and I felt very confident saying that. I didn't even think it was a stretch to say it's been a toxic environment there. I probably shouldn't have said locker room because that put that more on the guys, which I didn't mean.
Yeah.
Guys are fine.
It just isolated only the players, not management, not coach, nothing else. It was all players. And I think that's where he got it at too.
Yeah,
I think that's where it hit.
I think that people heard it and it hit a different way. But the truth is, like, I've been around the Suns a few times this year. Early in the season, I thought they seemed happy. It was a breath of fresh air when Bud and his staff came in there. I thought they all were like hyped for the season. I saw them preseason and early on in LA. I went out there on Christmas and I was like, whoa, what has happened in this locker room? Like, it seemed very different, like a very different mood. But also the last 6 weeks, all I've been doing is calling about how, what's going on with Bradley Beal. They benched him. They benched Nurkic. They're trying to trade him. He doesn't want to be traded. That doesn't. His wife's getting yelled at by people in the stands.
Right.
Then they tried to Luka KD. Right? Like they traded. Putting him in trade talks without really telling him. He found out. Kind of just through chatter. That didn't feel good, especially because Kevin wanted to stay in Phoenix. Kevin was happy.
Kevin didn't want to go anywhere.
No, he gave Matt Ishbia a vote of confidence. Like I just wrote a story a few weeks ago. Kevin went on the record basically saying, I'm here to try to figure this out. I'm in it for the long run. I appreciate Matt continuing to invest in our team and giving us chances. Like that is the biggest vote of confidence that he could have given them. So, I think he felt a little blindsided by his name coming up in trade talks. The rest of the team is feeling that when people are losing, they went from being they had a hot start and then they've kind of lost. They've lost their way. They're trying hard. But it's been so to me, the word toxic was fine to describe the situation they were in. My mistake was probably
not just isolate just the locker room.
The locker room, yeah, because that was not about the guy. The guys, as far as I hear, the guys actually get along very well, right? And so Katie took it as like, saying something about the guy. But all he ever did was say it's hard for media to judge the tenor of the locker room because you're only in here for 45 minutes and you don't see everybody's getting taped and whatever.
Yeah.
And so,
he mentioned you though. But he mentioned you, and that drew more attention to it because of he mentioned you. But then he expounded on and didn't just isolate you. And he talked about media. Ramona, I think the difference is like when they interviewed Tim McMahon off of a Phoenix loss. I think it was to Utah. Somebody got blew out. Yeah, and he was talking about how the locker room was. And how down it was. It's hard to compare that because at that time when you lose big like that with expectations, the locker room is going to, you guys don't want to talk afterwards, and so the mood is going to be different. So that's kind of an unfair assessment at that time, unless you've been in every locker room and it's been a particular pattern every time. That's when you can utilize that. So I'm glad you cleared that up because I know that Kevin respects you as a reporter and kind of what you do. And I think that, again, not listening to the bigger conversation and what he had and what he said was more protecting the players more so than directing anything at you. So I appreciate you clearing that up. Now, before we go ahead.
Last thing, I actually think the fact that he used my name is what made it feel like people interpreted that as personal.
Yeah.
Personally, I felt like his criticism there was fair. And, when you're on TV, people are going to hear, like, I felt like I was describing a situation that people would very honest, like having talked to so many people in Phoenix, like was fine. I didn't even think what I said was out there, but he used my name because we know each other.
Yeah.
He didn't use my name because we don't know each other. He didn't use my name because he was trying to put me on blast. Like, when he wants to put you on blast, we've seen Kevin put people on blast. Like,
we have. You know
what I mean? Like, and so what I like about Kevin is that Kevin tells you how he feels, and he's not afraid to put his name on things. Like, he's not in the shadows. Like, and he's also communicative. Like, you can talk with Kevin about stuff, and like,
so he's open to listening. He's open to listening. Right. Okay.
Yeah. And for me too, like, this should be a two-way street. This is always what I've said about reporters and players, and so much of what I think happens in our media landscape is that we're not having direct conversations anymore, or we are having a direct conversation, but then it gets chopped up everywhere else, or something you say lands wrong with somebody, but that's not quite what you meant. And what like, I don't think he meant to say lazy. He wasn't calling me lazy. Like, it's just a word that came out of his mouth, and people, woo, right? And I was like, no, I know what he's saying. But let's be real. This man got put in an awkward situation by the management of his team. And I actually think his press conference yesterday, one, he scored 30,000 points. He's one of only 7 players in NBA history to get there. The press conference we're talking about was the day before this. But I felt like he could have put the organization on blast. He could have, gone and poured gasoline on that fire. Okay. But he didn't.
But he didn't.
His aim in his comments was to be a good teammate. His aim was to settle things down. Like, you could tell he was trying to be like, hey, I'm still going to play. I'm going to ball out. We'll see what happens the rest of the year. We'll see what happens in summer. But he was letting everybody know that he was still in it. Like, if I got to be a little collateral damage there, that's fine. We talk about you guys. You can talk about us. That's fine. I've been doing this for a while, and I also know him, and we know each other, and we have a good relationship. And we still do. We've talked since then. I didn't think it was anything to it. And so whatever, sometimes the aggregation cycle makes things something that they're not. Like, it was the same thing like a couple years ago in the finals. Remember, Eric Spoelstra was like, hey, to the untrained eye.
Right? Oh, untrained. Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. And then I walked around like, should I lean into this one? Untrained eye over here. I was like, I don't know. Jeff Van Gundy was saying that during the whole broadcast too. But okay, But the truth is, like, Spo and I are fine. He called me that night. He was like, sorry, man, I didn't mean for that to come across like that. I was at the end of the press conference, he was trying to get up. But also, so he didn't want to give Jokic bulletin board material. And I asked something a little too close to the truth, right? And so he didn't want to lean into that conversation. And so, like, every once in a while, you're going to get one of those. And like, the player, the coach, they have an agenda they're trying to do, and I mean agenda in a good way. For Spo, it was like, I don't want to make locker room for billboard material for Jokic, right? After they won that game in Denver. And for KD, it's like, I'm just trying to put the cap back on the bottle so we can finish this season out strong. So
see, but the difference though, you said this, Ramona.
Yeah.
How the Lakers handled it and kept it in compared to once it got out by Phoenix, the more teams you talk to, it brought you to this point where it was an uneasiness. And now Kevin Durant has to answer all these questions, and the rest of the players have to answer these questions because they started to put it, even though they honestly, they know they don't want to trade Kevin Durant, but he's their only asset. They're too really to not get rid of Booker.
I mean, Devin Booker, Booker will get a lot, but they don't want to get rid of Booker because he's younger.
That's why I said he's
the
their
franchise
only
all-time leading scorer at 27, 28, wherever he is. That's amazing.
He's not going. Okay, so before you get out of here, I wanted to ask you, because you're a big advocate, especially for women's sports and the equality part of women's sports. Again, that's not saying that the women got to get paid the same as the equality part and being able to have the voice. The Nike commercial that was ran at the Super Bowl, first time Nike did a commercial since 1997, all female. Director, I think it was writer, producer, but also with Sha'Carri Richardson, it was Sabrina Ionescu, Caitlin Clark, Asia Woods, to name a few. Yeah. What was your take? And it's back and forth in, the Twitter sphere and social media kind of what the commercial really was saying? Did it help women? Did it hurt women? What's your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, I think I love that women's sports is in the cultural zeitgeist right now. You know, like I love that it's front and center, but it's finally for the right reasons. Like it's not a one-off story. And so, you know, I think like to me, like I watch women's basketball a lot. I think Asia Wilson is like the truth. Like to me, Asia Wilson is like she should be a way bigger star in our world. Like I people who don't realize it's Asia, right, and who she really is, like that, you know, like she should win MVP every year as far as I'm concerned. Like that she's that good. And so Sha'Carri's out there. I was so glad she had that redemption story right at the last Olympics, you know. And I think that like I'm glad for Nike for like getting it out there and stirring the pot a bit. Like I think I think it was more just Nike saying like let's not be afraid of this conversation.
I love it. I mean, it was dope because I think Wyden and Kennedy, they've been doing the production and shooting Nike's for Nike says I've been there when I were doing commercials back then. So I could see, especially with the black and white and kind of how they brought everything together. So just wanted to get your.
Let's not be afraid. Let's not be afraid. You know, like that was my take, you know, it's okay to talk.
No. I appreciate your time. And I know you got mommy duties. You're running around, but I would love later in the season, maybe circle back either playoff time, before playoff time to kind of see where things sit. Not just with Dallas, not just with the Lakers, with Sacramento and some other moves funny. Like that.
Like I love when I do YouTubes, like when I do like when a podcast, you're like, okay, I'm just doing a podcast. I won't get all dressed up or anything. And then I was like, okay, we were doing this around 3:00, and I was like, I picked my son up at 2:38, and I'm at my mom's house. So if I do it at my mom's house, I can't lock the door. In my house, I have a lock on my office door. You know?
Right.
And so I'm like, I'm gonna go to the car. I can lock the door. So like this is like you're seeing the inside of my Honda Accord. With me, with rain in LA, so I didn't put any makeup on. My hair's a little wet from the rain.
We want the natural stuff. We want the natural. We want the natural stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, Ramona. All right. Enjoy the rest of the year too. All right. See you down the line.
I said yes because it's you. I said yes because it's you. I've always thought you were great. So.
All right. I appreciate it. All right. See you later. That's good stuff there. A lot of information to download, but I knew Ramona would provide a better insight to the business, the thinking of both sides of the table, the why not. I love that we got a chance to address the KD kind of back and forth between the two, who are great friends, those two. Ramona talked about how her and KD were able to have a conversation, but then advocating for, you know, the equality, the recognition on the women's side in sports is great. Interesting to kind of see what moves forward with the WNBA and with the conversation we had about now players, once that money kicks in with the new CBA, how their demands are going to change a little bit more, maybe see more movement of superstars within the WNBA. But this weekend coming up, a lot of, coming up the All-Star break, All-Star game coming up. I hope it's enjoyable. I hope the changes to the All-Star game provide a lot of excitement and fun, intrigue, competition more than anything else. And at the end of the day, I don't care what you do with the rules. If players don't play hard, it doesn't matter. So we can always say back in the day, and we're the old guys, but, back in the 70s and 80s and early 90s, those guys played hard. And that's what made the All-Star game competitive. We lost that somewhere. So hopefully with the format changes, this All-Star weekend, the game in particular, can be a lot more competitive and fun, because I think the players need to do that. The players deserve that. But more importantly, the fans and the sponsors deserve that as well. So enjoy it. Have a great weekend. Look forward to catching up with you next week. Peace.